bacon, soaked in a brine, rolled in cornmeal, slice it, you fry it, you eat it, your quality of life plus your cholesterol significantly increase. But that's not all they have in here. They have various cheese emporiums, freshly cut meats, farm foods, vegetables, fruits, and other fantastic stuff. They have the Olympic Cheese Mart that has 400 varieties of cheese. So highly recommend you guys check it out. Let's talk about the history of Toronto. So you are in fact in Toronto, Ontario. If you thought you were in Toronto, Ohio, I'm sorry, you're not in the right place. This is the wrong tour for you. Toronto comes from two places. We're not quite sure where the origin of that name comes from. It's either the Iroquois Mohawk term of Toronto, meaning where the trees hit the water, and this is in reference to 1 hour north from us in Lake Simcoe. Or it's Tononto, the Huron word meaning the meeting place, or specifically the place where you can meet people by paddling up the river in a canoe. Now that's a mouthful, so we'll just call it Toronto. It was originally named the town of York. This was done by a man named Lord John Grave Simcoe, who was our very first Governor General. After the 7 Years' War between England and France to claim North America, they have a Governor General who's the de facto ruler and representative of the Crown. Now, he was a very, very fond of proper British-sounding names, so he gave the city, or the town of York. And this was a little bit of an issue, because in North America, there was already a York, New York. New York had more people, was more developed, and gave us a list of very bad names that we hated. They called us Muddy York, Dirty York, Smelly York, Crummy York, Little York, Poor York. So we didn't like this, and we went to Lord John Grave Simcoe and said, please, Lord John Grave Simcoe, change the name. We hate it so much. And he said quite famously, over my dead body. So we killed him in cold blood. That's not true, that's not true. You see, there's something here called Canadian murder. That's where you patiently wait for someone to die of old age. That is Canadian murder. We're a very passive-aggressive group of people. I'm in fact doing it right now. So that's what happened. We waited for him to die, and then through a lengthy bureaucratic process, we changed the name to Toronto, which is a remain to this day. Now, something that Lord John Grave Simcoe also did, he moved the capital from Niagara-on-the-Lake here during 1811 because he was worried of American invasion. And he was right. They did invade in 1812 during the War of 1812. However, the first place they came to during that war was the town of York, where they occupied it for 5 weeks and then burned it to the ground. To our right is the most important building on the tour, which is the Big Wax Car Wash. Thank you, good night. I'm joking. This is where our Parliament once stood. We are on Parliament and Front Street. This is where Canadian Parliament for Upper and Lower Canada stood right here. However, my American friends, they burned to the ground. A bit of, let's say, active remodeling. Now, we thought this was such a quaint and dandy experience for us Canadians that 1 year later in 1813, we kindly returned the favor by marching on Washington, D.C., and we burnt their parliament to the ground. No comment. Now, the industrious people that my American friends are, rebuild their parliament, slap on a fresh coat of white paint, and by 1901, it's being called the White House. So you are, in fact, welcome. Now, I like to kid because the War of 1812, or the Anglo-American War, was probably the most useless war ever. Because after the Napoleonic Wars were over, we went back to square one, and we went back to being best of friends, sharing more industry than any other country combined together. Plus, we get invited to all the same slumber parties. So it's a lot of fun. Speaking of slumbering, we are entering the distillery district, where all of that fine Canadian whiskey was pioneered. This is Stop 20. Anyone for Stop 20 for the distillery district? Nobody. Opened up in 1832 as a wheat mill. By the 1840s, Gooderham and Warts decides it's a much better idea to turn all of that flour, specifically rye flour, into fantastic whiskey. So if you ever hear in a bar someone asking for rye and ginger or rye and cola, this is Canadian whiskey. Rye flour we use. Not like Canadian Club, Wisers, all that fun stuff. To our right, this remains one of the largest intact Victorian-era industrial centers outside of the UK. And there were more whiskey being produced here than everywhere else on the world combined in the 1860s because of a very pesky thing called cholera. The Red Death was rampant here in Toronto, and because of that, you could not drink the water unless it was distilled into fine Canadian whiskey. So this is great if you want to be drunk all day, every day, because people were. This means police officers were drunk, women and children were drunk, and school teachers were drunk. But that hasn't changed much. If you're a school teacher today, you're probably still drunk. That is a time-honored tradition. A certain demographic of people coming into this area were the Irish. The Irish potato famine happening in 1847. All 3,000 of those Irishmen, women and children emigrating to this part of Toronto, which is called Corktown in honor of County Cork, Ireland. Now it's because of that we have two first. On your left-hand side, this beautiful brick building is the Enoch Turner Schoolhouse, the first free school in all of Toronto, if not Canada. And then still on our left, the Little Trinity Church, the first free church. Enoch Turner was a brewmaster at the distillery. He was a philanthropist, not a philanderer, totally different thing. He was a philanthropist. He thought it was not fair that the Irish could not afford to send their children to school, so he built a free school just for them, and a few short years later, the city of Toronto takes it over and makes all schooling free. Same thing goes with the Little Trinity Church here. There was something called pew fees back in the day. Every 2 weeks, you had to pay for your ticket to church ahead of time, and it was very expensive. So the Irish, again, not having the money for this, had a free church built just for them. And the funny story about that church being a free church, that is the oldest standing church in Toronto right now, because all the other churches were made out of wood, and wood burns very easily. Which took us 2 great fires to figure out. Guys, did you know wood does burn? Isn't that amazing? Had no idea up to 1849. Had no idea. So we will talk about those fires in just one moment, but first and foremost, on your left-hand side is a Porsche dealership. I buy my cars here, thank you. No, this is the old dueling grounds of Toronto. So gentlemen of noble disposition would duel here if they felt insulted. And there were honor laws in place that meant that if you killed your opponent, you would not be charged with murder, just slapped with a heavy fine. Which was a pretty good trade-off. So let's talk about these fires. So 1849, during that period of heightened whiskey drinking, there is a clear coincidence, there's a clear connection between the two, is when we had our first Great Fire in 1849. This happened on the corner of James and King Street, where a very intoxicated man from all that fine Canadian whiskey stepped out of a pub, threw his lit cigar into a bale of hay, and ignited all 10 city blocks in flames. It took about 4 weeks to get the fires completely under control, and it was at this time that we didn't really make the connection between fire and wood. So we basically rebuilt the city completely out of wood. This would tend to be a very bad idea. But we did implement what's called a 2-bucket system, which meant that you have 2 buckets of water on every floor of every building. Great idea in theory, because water does put out fire. But my friends, this is Canada. What happens when water becomes too cold? So a very cold April 1904, the second Great Fire starts at a necktie factory along the harbor. The winds coming off the lake fan the flames north. We all start freaking out. We go, oh, that's right, we have all these buckets of water. Oh, they're frozen. Let's run away and watch the city burn for 8 weeks. The flames in those opening hours were so hot and massive, you could see them on the other side of Lake Ontario on Niagara on the lake. We had to get firefighters from Buffalo, New York to come and help us put the flames out. It was that bad of a problem. It was not fun. Now, fun fact, in both of those great fires, not a single person died because of the fire. Wow. What did happen though we're over here. What happened is this building over here survived the fire because it's conveniently made out of brick, which is non-flammable. That is the key, not inflammable. Inflammable means flammable. Non-flammable means not flammable. This is not flammable, this is brick. Another building to survive that, both those fires, is across the street will be St. Lawrence Hall on our left-hand side. It's our first official town hall. Now, it's a very beautiful structure. They have 4 original burning kerosene lanterns that still run on kerosene to this day. It's a very beautiful structure. And again, stone brick doesn't tend to ignite on flames. It took us 2 fires to figure that out. On our right-hand side, we have the gardens of the Cathedral Church of St. James. Now, if you see those mounds there, that is not a landscaping effort. Those are mass burials for cholera. Cholera. This structure, though, this beautiful structure, is the St. James Cathedral Church. This is the choice place of worship for Queen Elizabeth II whenever she visits Toronto. It is also supposed to be our fire alarm for those 2 first-grade fires. However, the fire were so hot, not only did the churches burn down, this is version 3, the bells melted. The iron bells melted. So they got one ring off, they melted, everyone ran away. So our next stop 21, will be the King Edward Hotel coming up on our left-hand side. Anyone getting out for the King Edward Hotel? Is anyone staying in the King Edward Hotel? Thank goodness it's the most haunted place in Canada. On our left-hand side, the King Edward Hotel is built on the old execution grounds of Toronto. At one point, there were 120 separate offenses to be hanged for in this city. They include, but are not limited to, stealing a pair of soldier socks. That's a hanging. Forging a $1 bill. That's a hanging. Being disguised as a tree in a forest. That's a hanging. And my friends, I can't even make this up if I tried. If you're caught humming, singing, or whistling the tune of Yankee Doodle Dandy, you better believe you get hanged for that. That was treason. However, executions are illegal in Canada. You have maximum life sentences, so you can sing, hum, and whistle any tune your heart desires. Right now, we sit in the financial core of Toronto, where you'll find the 5 major banking institutions of Canada, of CIBC, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, the Bank of Nova Scotia, or Scotiabank, TD, or Toronto Dominion Bank, RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, and then BMO, the Bank of Montreal. This is a very beautiful structure. A lot of these buildings are original. Again, we have heritage laws here that state that a building is over 100 years old and it has cultural significance. It cannot be torn down. And if you damage, alter, or destroy the outside facade, you will be heavily fined and in some cases put into jail for 1 year. Unfortunately, it doesn't get enforced as often as it should, but for most of the time, it is golden. So something that has this heritage standing is this building on our left-hand side across the street. This is the Simpsons Tower, which was at one time a competitor, the competitor, against the Eaton's Company. Now, while both these companies are no longer around, the company that owns this building is the Hudson's Bay Company, which is the oldest incorporated company in all of the Americas. Incorporated in 1670 and has been operated under that title and management since those days. However, today it is owned by Saks Fifth Avenue, so it's no longer Canadian owned, but still Canadian operated. Now, any husbands or boyfriends on board, you should start running now. This is the largest women's shoe store in Toronto and the largest cosmetics counter in North America. Hundreds of husbands and boyfriends die a year from sheer boredom.
No, you're not.
Don't go running to this building because this is the Eaton Center with 200 more stores of shopping experience and sheer bored bliss. 4 levels of shopping, 2 major subway stops, 4 city blocks long, 200 stores. It is the largest downtown shopping center in Canada. Not the largest mall, though. That goes to the West Edmonton Mall. This one's huge. It's actually faster to take the subway from one end to the other than it is to actually walk.
Holy shit.
Now, there are 4 levels of shopping. It's segregated shopping, so the bottom levels are the cheapest, the topmost are the most expensive. I haven't been past the 2nd floor. If you can tell me what's up there, please let me know, because it looks very pretty. That is the Eaton Center. Eaton Center used to be the place to shop. Eaton's Company, very big deal, competitor of Sears. However, Eaton's has gone, Simpsons has gone, and Sears is very close to being gone as well. Unfortunate for Sears, because Sears modernized shopping and retailing with the Sears catalog. They were the very first company, probably in the world, to have a catalog of their full items within the store. It's this little thing is still, it's not stopping. It keeps going. So my friends, we are coming up back to stop number 1. This is Yonge and Dundas Square. It is the end of the tour. Now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. If you want to stay on the bus, you'll have to make your arrangements with Hardick. But unfortunately, for the most part, my friends, this is where the tour ends. So thank you so much for coming aboard. I hope you all enjoyed your stay. We do accept gratuities and high fives, tips if you will. If you enjoyed your time here,